All right, let's see if we are up and running. Give me a second here to check in with my signal here, see if we're coming through. And I'm showing a loading screen here. I suspect that's going to flip over to actually live in a moment because even I see my own loading screen. Oh man, so let's hit refresh real quick and see if the dreams come true. And looks like we are live. So checking in my volume here. Check. Looks like we are live. So checking in my volume here. Check. Yeah. Okay, sounds good. All right, I'm gonna drop back down there, and I'm going to continue spamming my wakey signal. And let me distract you with my origin story. Hey, my name is Phil Kearney. I create role-playing games. I illustrate them. I publish them online, and I've been running games in D&D since 1987. I've been using the Eberron campaign setting since 2006, and I've been creating content on the DMsGuild since 2017, but I have yet to publish an actual adventure. So we are in the process of altering that history, or keeping the history, homaging it, and taking actions to make it an adventure. So this is Crystals of Avar. It's an adventure for 4 to 5 characters, level 7 to 8. Take place in the campaign setting of Eberron, in the Carnwood, in the nation of Karnath, on the continent of Corvair, fighting undead and necromancers. This is the book cover. We created this back around episode 40, I think. And hold on, let me fix my screen setup here. There we go. You can catch signal on me. I'm on the X Twitter platform at Phil Kearney. Otherwise, you can like, subscribe, hit the bell icon. Hey, we have new subscribers. Thanks a lot, guys. I appreciate you being interested in my stuff. But here's the full playlist here of all 289 episodes. We're on episode 40. We created this book cover. And currently, we are making tree tokens in a forest battle map. So we've been at this for a little while, and we're just going to keep hacking away at them like trees, I guess, until they're all done. And well, let's be honest. The journey is as important as the destination in this circumstance, because I've never made an adventure, so there's all this language about like how to you create symbols in maps that represent the objects and things that objects are things that the objects and locations that characters interact with, and then you make tokens, creature tokens, for the peoples and creatures that you interact with. But since I've never made an adventure, I don't have any preset language for creating those types of maps. Or like, what does a tree look like in Phil's world? Like, how does Phil design trees? And I could, of course, probably go buy somebody's stock art, but I'm a fucking artist. So the whole reason I made these books in the first place is because I wanted to have a device to be able to share my art with that used my own visions and my own inspiration, instead of, because I've been freelancing since artist. Yeah, I've been freelancing since like basically 1999. And so I've been in a ton of different types of books, different genres, different game systems, and now I'm creating my own content. So it's the whole reason I started making books in the first place is because of globalization, being able to compete against the entire world, where I'm living in one of the most expensive places you can possibly live. Means that everyone can basically charge the same rates, but depending on where you live, it means more to you. And instead of moving to a country where a dollar means 6 times, 7 times the amount that it does in America, I just decided to stay in America and make books instead of trying to find companies that were willing to pay the price I want for my artwork. So I can pay myself the amount I want for artwork if I make books that people like. So I've been learning how to make books that people like, that I want to make. And eventually I will find my tribe. So that's what we're doing. We're making stuff that I want to make. And we're making it the way that I want to make it. And we're making it for the reasons I want. And God's willing, if I keep at it long enough, enough people will find me that I can make all the things happen, all the wonderful things. But I love making trees, so this has been a fun experience. But what can keep it entertaining for the rest of the world is by talking about stuff that maybe I have a unique perspective on, or at least have accumulated an opinion about. So hey, Ralph, what's going on, my guy? Thanks for showing up yesterday. We had our so I've stopped streaming on Monday nights for the time being because we've started playtesting the martial power system for 5th level characters, and yesterday was character design, or rather character building, and we had one of our people was down and missing due to the flu, so they'll be back with us ASAP, probably in time for start on Monday, the August 5th will be our first actual session. And Rel here is part of the team, along with Kitty Loaf, Hornetico, Alex. Yeah, and we have 5 for now. So if attrition takes 1 or 2 away from us, then we'll restock as necessary. But so far we have a team of 5, and I think we're gonna have a lot of fun. Let me get that twig in shape here. So if we start from the outside and work our way into the trunk, we can continue to make it thicker and thicker. But if we start at the trunk and work our way out, it has to get thinner and thinner. And we can only get down to 1 pixel. So it's easier to work our way outside inward to make sure that we get consistent scaling and thickness to the branches as we go inward, because you can always have a thicker trunk. That is the nature of trees. So we are working with the nature of trees by reaching inward. Isn't that symbolic? It sounds almost spiritual. Toolish. Hey, what's up? So, he says. I kind of like the idea of a maneuvering strike. We're going to be back on at lunch today to continue working on martial powers, and we'll probably just keep building monsters using the power system kits. So we have 170 different powers that either require mana or, like cantrips, don't cost any mana to use. But we can diversify and make unique monsters by giving them powers, just like characters can have powers. This is a very 3rd edition mentality where monsters were character classes, and when you had a monster, like if you had an ogre, if you wanted to make an ogre mage, you take an ogre and then you start stacking on mage levels. And then they can cast spells or do ogre stuff. And 4th edition and 5th edition did away with that by gamifying PvE, where the computer enemy is not directly reflecting the abilities of characters. So that's something that we are bringing back to Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition by creating a power system with an abundance of powers that can be tacked onto any creature that you want to make their combat loops and capabilities and responses a little more unique and different than what people expect. So you can basically take a kit of powers that can do things as actions, reactions, bonus actions, and movement and stuff, and give them essentially any skin that you want to make them look like any kind of monster. But a monster is defined by its looks and by its actions. Like, what does it look like? What does it do? Those are the 2 questions that players have. What does it look like? What does it do? So you can make it look like anything you want, and you can make it do anything that you want. So if you have a system of options that you can tack on, basically staple onto any kind of a monster, you can take a monster that looks cool and make it do whatever you want. That is essentially adventure design. that is combat encounter design in a nutshell for any role-playing game. What does it look like? What does it do? But Rel, you got some questions going on here. Let me tap in with you. So if you were to create your own version of D&D, why give all classes the same abilities? Like, give all spellcasters the same spell list. I kind of like the fact that they have different stuff. It gives them flavor. I agree, it does. So if we're talking about martial powers specifically, like why do I have? So there's spells. Okay, so there's about 500 different spells that are currently published for Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition, and it was thousands in 2nd edition, and certainly somewhere around, probably around 1,000 plus in 3rd edition, and then 5th edition did away for the most part with spells, quote unquote, and gave each character a different stack of powers that they could use. That were like basically actions, reactions, bonus actions, swift actions, movement-based stuff. That was, you know, use an action economy, do a thing. Now 4th edition was harangued by its detractors because everything felt the same. The entire power structure, there was no uniqueness in, like, everyone had a make an attack, deal 2 dice of damage plus whatever stat is relevant to you, and every class could do that. So that's just like a strike, and a wizard could do it by like holding an orb and then pointing it at you, and it would do 2 dice of damage plus intelligence modifier, while a fighter would heft a sword and swap it at you, and if the die roll was high enough, it would do 2 dice of damage plus strength modifier to you, or a rogue dex modifier, blah blah blah. It was so formulated and had so, like, after a while you really couldn't tell what power belonged to what character. Like, is this a cleric power, or is this a warlord power, or is this a bard power? And at a certain point, the answer is always yes. It's all of those things, but it's the flavor that's there. So a lot of diversity that comes from characters now in 5th edition is from the selection that, like, for spellcasters, basically your style, your signature is coming mostly from the kind of spells that you want to cast. The role that, like, in D&D 5e, the role that you play is more so dictated by the actions you can take than by the features that your character has. Though features often tell you what actions your character is supposed to take. Spellcasters are different, that they have their list of class features, but those class features for full casters largely either modify or affect what kind of spells they can cast, or provides an additional power system, like with an additional budget of stuff. Like the bard has the inspiration die on top of having full casting. Right, like it's debatable that a bard doesn't need an inspiration die because it has full 9th level casting. Well, then what do you do with the bard? Now, it probably would have been a lot more sensible to design the bard as a half caster, much like the artificer is, leaning into a half casting charisma class. That, well, we already have the paladin. The paladin is now playing the role of the half casting charisma class, and then the ranger is playing the role of the half casting dexterity class. And the artificer is playing the role of the half-casting intelligence class, and they all have access to spells from level 1 to 5. But the paladin is the best, because the paladin's class features allows it to use its resources differently than what the artificer and the ranger can. The artificer is second best because it has an entire additional power system that is attached to the class design that allows it more diversity by creating magic items, the infusions that the artificer has. That makes it stronger, but it's not as useful. See, D&D is a combat game, and the paladin can convert spell slots into damage at any time using smite powers. That makes, in the game of D&D, which is a combat simulation game, that makes the paladin the strongest half-caster, because it can most closely emulate the power that full casters can on a half-caster's budget. So the artificer doesn't have any cool spiking perks like that, so it gains an entire additional power budget to create magic items that can attempt, to a certain degree, compete with the utility that full casting provides. And Ranger has no additional power source systems, no additional resources, and it has no ability to convert its resources into something more useful. So Paladin is best, Artificer is second, and Ranger is third in the world of half-casters. I think I'm roundabout answering your question. So the question is, why give them all the same abilities? You don't. See, all the classes have their own abilities, but there is a unifying, like the power system that we created, it is an alternate magic source system that interacts, that uses your action economy to create effects in a different way than the bonus action, reaction, and standard action casting of spells does. So, but wizards and sorcerers have access essentially to the same list of spells to an extent. Wizards have more, but basically anything a sorcerer has, a wizard also has access to, essentially. So they basically have the same list of spells, but how they use them is different, right? So the sorcerer's shtick is that they have meta magic, so they can take a spell that they want to cast, and then they can spend extra mana to make it a different, like to modify the spell as needed in the moment. That is the unique like signature of what the sorcerer is. And if you build the problem that 5th edition has is it's meek. It's attempting to take baby steps in creating innovation because it doesn't want to rock the money boat that 5th edition unexpectedly became for Wizards of the Coast. They didn't think it was going to be an explosion of popularity like it has. It was just attempting to reunite the old school, like at the time at the beginning of 2015, the people that were young when they were playing 3rd edition have grown up and are now basically at the age where they run the country and start having management positions and have disposable income and are still hobbyists. So 5th edition was basically a way of reconnecting to that aging audience that also happens to have more wealth than the younger audience that generally learns and picks up D&D during their teens. They're worthless. They have no income. So a mega corporation is not going to value these low revenue game players. That's why they're attempting to monetize the system with digital stuff, because you can nickel and dime people like literally for dollars at a time and end up getting a low income participant to spend large amounts of money over time if you give them value added options that cost a couple bucks at a time that they legitimately value and come back and buy more and more of, like microtransactions. That is, as they say, the future of D&D, because it's the only way they know how to monetize something large scale over time is by microtransactions. D&D, the DMsGuild, and like itch.io, ttrpg, for any of these role-playing games that have expansions and supplements, those are microtransactions for the game system. Like there's 6 books in the martial power system currently, or in the color mana system currently. Here, let's go look at the color mana system here real quick on the DMsGuild. This is a bundle that I've created since 2017. I've been adding books to it as I have the opportunity to, and currently we're at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 books in the series. And the martial powers book that we're creating on Tuesdays and Fridays, and then we're playtesting on Mondays. That'll be book number 7, but we're also going to have Spell Point Sorcerers, will be book number 8, and we'll have Spell Point Artificers, which will be book number 9. And then we can do all sorts of little sub-books. And once Martial Powers comes out, we'll have a unified game mechanic for all 13 classes, a mana system that can be rolled into martials, casters, Gishin between. We can also, since everyone will have a mana system, we can implement that for like racial features in a almost Palladium sort of way. So the power system offers a broad range of options for these martial characters to now do using their action economy and resources in different ways. But there is only one list. You want to have enough options available in the master list so that characters can all have different unique options that they want to pursue. That they can use their characters in different ways. This character wants to lean into reactions. This character wants to lean into strike effects and so wants more attacks to have more strikes. Another character wants to make use of exploits that leaves their actions free to do whatever it is that they want to do, but they can like use their movement and object interactions, which are basically free actions, to create results. Like there's different action loops based on how you see your character performing, which requires a certain level of system mastery. Like the martial power system is something that I think caters to the 5e audience that, like me, really likes the game engine and likes playing D&D and likes what D&D is, and is familiar enough with the system to be able to game it and optimize and find, as a result of being capable of optimizing, learn what the game can't do by becoming intimately familiar with what the game can do. And so it's those gaps of you can't do this, you can't do that, blah, blah, blah. Whatever those gaps are, for an optimizer and enthusiast of actual like game physics, a designer perspective, a way to keep that audience entertained in your game is by offering more technical options. In 3rd edition, the solution to this was the Book of Nine Swords, sword magic or martial powers, and in 4th edition, there was no real answer because everything felt exactly the same way. But in 3rd edition, when they developed the Book of Nine Swords, Tome of Battle, that's what it was called, Book of Nine Swords, the Tome of Battle. It created an alternate magic system that all of the martial characters had access to, but they used it in different ways by the way that their characters, their class features. So the long-winded answer to that is you give all the characters the same set of spells or powers that are available, and the class features that the character has chosen with their class allows them to use those features in different ways. Like in the power system specifically, the ranger really leans into marking targets and being able to add action economy or damage value to the targets that are marked. And as you scale in levels, you can mark more targets, you can sustain those marks easier, or you deal more damage and have more effects that you can use with against a marked target. So rangers snipe and mark things, which is still, which isn't as universally applicable as paladins are. So what did we do? We gave every martial class paladin smite abilities. So we disintegrated what made the paladin the standout best best resource uses, and we made that a universal principle that everyone can make use of. Everyone can smite. Paladins smite better than everyone else by having just more raw damage every time when they smite. They can opt into dealing additional damage once per round by using their bonus action to ramp the damage that they deal. So the paladin can by default do more smite damage than anyone else if they're willing to chew up more action economy than anyone else to do so, but they have that option. Rangers don't have that option, but if they have a target marked, they can do as much damage against that marked target as the paladin can, and eventually the ranger has the ability to select can switch targets multiple times per turn, so they then can like catch up to where the paladin is at, but in a different way, where the fighter, for instance, can smite almost as hard as a paladin can, but has more attacks per round. So you can deal a little less than what the paladin can do with a smite, but can do more smites per turn. So that's how the fighter is different with these smite powers. And then you have the barbarian, which can as the barbarian gains levels, when they sacrifice their advantage on attacks, they gain more and more smite damage on top of that, as opposed to the rogue, which has sneak attack. And the rogue can use smites every time that they use sneak attack. They can smite for free by replacing sneak attack dice with smite options. So they're all using the same powers, but their own individual character classes use those resources and default quote unquote spell options or powers in different ways. So their identity comes from how are they using the resources that are available to every class to be different and unique from each other. That is the essential of good game design, where players can become familiar with the different powers and choices that you can select for your character, and then they get to select what character they choose to express how they want to use those resources. They all spend mana and action economy to use them, but each class has different kicker effects that make using those things unique unto that class itself. So that is why you have a common language. Like all characters can use the same feats. And now that you know what those feats can do, you think about what characters, like what characters can make use of the Sentinel feat that really leans into martials. Can I imagine a druid that has the Sentinel feat that might have a unique way to make use of it? Yeah, you can create monsters with reach using druid wild shaping. If I take the Sentinel feat and I have a reach, I can now be like a large size grizzly bear and control a large zone of space with my Sentinel feat. You know how Sentinel feat works. Anyone can use it, but how can I use that differently with different class options, right? It's essentially the same thing there. Hopefully that's a sensible response or answers the core of the question. Hey, Ked, what are you doing? We're talking about game design, and specifically, Rel here in the sidebar with you, Ked. Ked, it's great to see you, by the way. Rel is part of the Martial Powers playtest that we are having for 5th level characters. We did character design yesterday, and one of his questions was about design, game design. What do I think is good game design? What are examples of the ways that I would make game design? And that was beyond the scope of the session yesterday. So I was like, if you want me to pontificate about that stuff ad nauseum, ask me in stream when all I'm doing is doodling. So what I'm doing is making tree tokens. So these are different black and white tree tokens. And once we finish all the black and white skeletons, here's the other ones I want to make. But as soon as I have these will all be different tree tokens that can be dropped down onto a forest floor space, and then bam, instant forest. So we're making tree tokens, we're making shrubbery and rock and obstacle tokens, as well as tents, campfire, sleeping bags. So we can build this will be a forest clearing camp map that will all be customizable, movable tokens. So if you pick up this little bundle of forest stuff, you can make your own little campground and whatever, and little shapes and obstacles and stuff in whatever configuration that you want. So since I've never made an adventure before, I've never consolidated or really defined the language that I use for these different staples of adventure maps. I don't have any of these types of tokens or things. So making adventures like this is an opportunity for me to really think about what do I want these things to look like? What do I want my forest tokens to look like? What do I want my trees to look like? What do I want my forest floors to look like? What kind of obstacle languages for a combat simulator game to create complications? What do I want to be represented in my environments? And that's essentially what we've been doing here for the past 200 some odd episodes, is creating maps and utilizing those principles to have a solid fantasy RPG mapping vibe that I'm basically establishing for myself right now. This is the first adventure. Everything is basically helping define these ideas for me. And since artwork doesn't really require any brain energy, it frees up my brain to ramble on about stuff. And the more I let my mouth run, the easier the pixels flow, because I'm not thinking about either thing in particular. It just becomes part of a flow state together. So I get to talk about stuff. And Rel is pretty good at fishing out interesting topics of conversation from me. So well done, Rel. If I were a bull and this were a rodeo, I would say, sir, that you have held on rather well. But I digress. What were we talking about? Yeah. Again, there's 5 different disciplines. Plus, you can choose to learn cantrip effects that don't require any mana at all. So there's a really wide range of stuff you can do. You can choose a limited set of powers that cost a lot of mana, so you won't be able to do a lot of them. But when you do, they're gonna pop. Or you could choose to lean into cantrip type effects, or like just stacking feats. So you don't have to use mana at all, but you get a ton of utility from all the feats that you're artificially gaining by replacing your spell options for just extra feats. So you become a resourceless fighter that can consistently produce the results that you want every round. Or you could lean into sustained effects, which are basically magical boosts and self-sustained buff effects that you turn these things on, and then like maybe you just use a bunch of weapon cantrips. So again, a different, instead of using feats, you use stable mana uses that allow you to customize and build your character to do what you want them to do, either by spending resources or not having to spend resources, because we have a mix of both of them. So you can really dive in and get all deck buildy about your character and make them do what you want, exactly what you want them to do. And since it's all on a prep system, you can switch from day to day, and using the sideboard, you can switch during short rests what powers your character has available to you, so that you can basically switch up what role your team plays by changing the selection of powers that you have today, or the feats that you have today. So the flexibility in it doesn't come, the flexibility comes from the vast amount of powers, or with casters, the spells that are available to them at any given level, and for them to choose which ones they want to be able to perform the role that they choose in the party. And then again, the class that you have, each class approaches using those options, or have their own resource system that gives them unique options inside of the common experience of just knowing what spells are. So you know what the feats are, you know what the spells are, you know what they can do, and you know what classes are really good at using them. So you build classes, like the classes you choose is going to, for casters, largely reflect the spells that you plan on using for your actions. So when you're playing 5th edition, what you're really doing is deciding, how do I want to use my character's action resources, my action economy each turn? And what are cool options available that use bonus action? I want to use a bonus action every turn, because otherwise I'm just not taking an action and I'm leaving it on the floor. So what kind of bonus actions do I want to use, and what classes give me access to options that use those bonus actions that way? That then become like the problem that people are currently concerned about with the new Paladin, is that the Paladin has all these things they can do with their bonus actions, but they have to use their smite with a bonus action. Like, if you don't use your bonus action to smite, you just don't fucking smite anymore. It's like, then why is everything, all this other stuff, a bonus action? Where when am I supposed to be a Paladin versus be all this other act? It's like you're having your own action economy grind against your own power fantasy. It's contradictory, and that is a concern that needs to be resolved, which I resolved by just restoring the ability to smite with an attack, but the Paladin can use their bonus action on top of it to deal even more damage. So once per turn, the Paladin can ramp their damage and do more than anyone else can possibly do, but they have to sacrifice their bonus action to do it. But that's the direction that 2024 is going, so we adapt and build with the game that we have, or we fuck off and go make our own game. And I like the IP of Magic the Gathering, which is married to D&D, to Wizards of the Coast, which means if I want to build Magic the Gathering stuff, I either do it as a fanboy and hope somebody tips me some bucks when I do it, or I make a book on DMsGuild and make the deal with the devil to have them take a good chunk of my change. But I then have a venue where I can actually publish it, and I legitimately get sales every week. So far it's been working out for me. But I'll eventually get tired of playing in somebody else's sandbox and making my own rules for their game. And I'll branch out and I'll make my own game. I'm already playtesting in a light ability check based system. One action economy per round, and you basically say what you want to do, and you make a die roll, and if you succeed at the die roll, you do the thing. It's pretty simple. On a scale of 1 to 10, how successful were you? On a scale of 1 to 10, how difficult was the task? What's the difficulty of the task versus the success that you have? That's the degree of success that you have. And each challenge has only so many degrees of success needed to defeat that challenge. So as you carry on your adventure and you accumulate successes against the challenges that you face, you eventually overcome those challenges. And you either create new challenges through complications, or the challenges can retaliate and take resources like hit points away from you to give you a risk-reward system for taking chances at scoring more successes against a thing with the risk of losing your own resources in the process. And that's a game system that I built. It's super fast and loose. I don't even have a name for it yet. It's in super opening. Like I begin all my playtesting with my own home table. I've got a weekly team that plays with me, and they'll play pretty much anything that I want them to play. And like if I want to test something, like yeah, let's go for it. And so they've been super awesome to me, but I keep showing up for them. I've ran them through an entire 1 to 20 level campaign over the course of 4 years. And I've ran some other one-shot type games with them, and at this point they're like, yeah, whatever you want to do, Chief, we're cool with it. So great team. It took me years and years to cultivate this team, but they are incredibly useful in allowing me to like do alpha testing. Like, is this good enough to explore? And once we fuck around with it for a little while, I was like, yeah, that has some teeth. Let's build it out a little bit more and start looking at something more formal. And that's when I'll jump on stream and start building stuff. And once it gets to a point where it's fleshed out enough and cohesive enough that others outside of the bubble can potentially comprehend what it is that we're doing, that's when we introduce it for third-party playtesting with teams. And I always run games myself when I'm playtesting it as a DM, to make sure it's easy for me to help guide players into it, so that when I build the book, I have a better idea of what needs to be in the book to help DMs make the thing work, you know? So, like I said, I can ramble a little bit, so I'm not sure if I'm still on topic or not. If I've strayed, let me know, and help get me back on course with the appropriate questions. Or, you know, prod me in the right direction with a proper taunt. But you see, we have to make this branch thicker down here. It's so much easier to make a branch thicker at the base by starting at the edge and working our way inward to see how the whole structure needs to thicken to support the full weight of it, than to start at the base and then work our way out to the tip. That's just bass-aff. How does that go? Half bass ackward. Thank you. I'm going to catch up on text here for a second because I suspect I'm being prodded. So, if you redesign 5e, it would be reformat the classes entirely to let them always have their toys, but pull from a central resource to push it further where they need to go. Yeah, that's what we've been working to achieve with the martial power system, to allow. My solution to that was allow you to exchange action economy to generate mana to do the thing that you want. The higher level you are, martials tend to have more action economy at higher levels, so they can afford to use that action economy to basically rev up and generate mana to do a thing. Like a fighter, like an 11th level fighter, can sacrifice 3 attacks and has a bonus action. So I could sacrifice my 3 attacks to get 3 mana to use as a bonus action to ramp up and do like a 9th plus level thing. So at level 11, I can consistently perform 9th level, like mid-level character things infinitely, and I would never have to touch my own mana pool. Or I could use all 3 of my attacks to attack, and I can fuel each one of them with my actual battery that will burn out when I use up all the mana in the battery. But for that round, I am going to Nova the fuck out of y'all. So the table then develops its own culture, because each table develops a culture around how many fights per day, how aggressive are those fights going to be, how much do we need to heal, What's our balance between combat, social, and exploration encounters? And I spent a lot of time in the stream talking about the differences between those 3 gears, that because 5th edition has 3 gears. It has hard, hard, deep combat mechanics. It has a light and swift ability check mechanics, and then it has free-form narrative mechanics. That is the core difference in the pillars of play between combat, exploration, and social. They're actually defining the 3 gears of action economy by giving them roles, giving them a narrative purpose in the game. If this was a dating sim game, it would be flipped. The social interaction would have the most action economy consequences and resources invested into it to get the girl. And then you would have the exploration space, which is find the girl. And then combat would be a narrative experience because it's not a fighting game, it's a dating game. So you don't want to get in fights, but you could use a fight narratively to prep. Like you could get into a fight, lose the fight, and that has no impact on your character, except now the girl that you're looking for is sympathizing with you because her hero got bloodied, and now she wants to tend to him. That could be like a deception exploit that you could use to manipulate. If you are a manipulative dater, you could potentially create nasty circumstances that make you look bad because the kind of person you want to attract is they like the bad boy, for instance. So you're going to do bad boy stuff, and like robbing a store might be an ability check that you accomplish, but the result of that is that you're going to have advantage on flirting checks with that girl while she witnesses you doing this art thing because she's into crime, for instance. But you're dictating the style of game you play by deciding where your action economy, your resources, and the bulk of the rules is going towards. Which is why in D&D, all encounters devolve into combat. If you fail a social encounter, it results in combat. If you fail a trap check, it results in taking damage. That's how the 3 action economies are defined. So, which is what I've been talking about. The martial power system creates options to use action economy in completely different ways, and since D&D itself is a combat simulator, the whole point of the game is to get into fights and to kill things and to deal damage. Everything that's in 5e leans mechanically into you getting into a fight, even though it seems that the new 2024 5th edition seems narratively, with all the art, to be more towards a social encounter game where you don't do anything other than LARP. You spend money on the game to LARP as a character that isn't necessarily using any of the features that you paid to have access to. So if people get upset about what D&D is, you need to figure out what kind of a game do you actually want to play, which is weird to hear from me because I'm like, you can use 5e to play any kind of game that you want, and I believe that's true. But I also am very forward about, you really need to understand what kind of a game you actually want to play so that the game that you're playing is actually working for you to achieve those goals. And I hate this little prong here. I want to kill that off. So the game system that I've been developing is 100% in that ability exploration, ability check exploration space, but I use that mechanic to resolve social encounters, exploration, and combat. It all uses, just like Cypher's system, it uses the same unified game mechanic of resolution for all different tasks. We can then just use different narratives to make those actions and those resource spends mean different things. Even though it's structured the same way, we're changing the flavor so that social encounters and exploration feel different from combat, even though they all use the exact same mechanics. So during an encounter, and you see this a lot in Cypher's system, you can have 3 different types of solutions to defeat a challenge: combat, exploration, social. If it's a well fleshed out enough encounter for the DM to have thought of, how can I resolve this with combat? How can I resolve this through exploration. How can I resolve this through social? And in a well fleshed out, like this game that we're building here was designed specifically to allow you to be able to switch gears between those different things. So every region, every map that you come across, each special encounter that you have more than one option, if not all three options, to be able to switch gears to whatever mode or gear of play you want to be in, which is largely dictated by where are we at in the game. What's the hangry level of my players? Can they, are they up for another resource spend in a combat encounter, or are we really just looking to streamline things so we can get a long rest, so that we can take a break and get our resources back to continue doing the fighting that we love because we play this fighting simulating game. And so I can take a combat encounter and then swap it down to be just a social encounter that is going to require maybe 1 or 2 die rolls, but becomes a mentally low cost because I don't have to micromanage action economy on a per round basis right now, because we're basically exploring a conversation through ability checks. So a good DM is going to be able to read the room and know how much micromanaging and how much resource usage and how much of these things, like just this mental bulk, can my team tolerate right now. And the better a DM can read the energy levels and enthusiasm of their team, the better they're going to be as a performer, catering to the interest level of their audience, the players, to be able to run a good game. So that's basically where a lot of DMing comes in, is being able to accurately read the feelings and energy level of your team. And that takes time. Blind people like me are particularly good at reading energy, because that whole myth about if you lose one sense, your other senses get better. Well, we have, and then we have 6 senses, so you can start picking up like on energy vibes and stuff like that if you focus if you start paying attention to that sort of thing. And it's just people with disabilities like myself just naturally lean into that as a compensation. So we get the sense of presence, and we get the feeling of like that empathic energy, like this guy is putting off subtle signs, not even necessarily looking at his phone, but I can tell his attention is starting to wane. I can just feel it. So I'm going to have to switch up the beat to grab his attention. What is Barry like? Barry likes Robin shit. Okay, cool. Well, let's drop a treasure token of some sort in there to keep Barry's attention, and that can lead us into the next fight, or that can be used to lead us into the next discovery for another exploration challenge, etc. Like I'm so special. Fuck off. That looks pretty good. So what I want to do is I want to break this. This branch here moves most smoothly from the main branch, so that makes this the main branch. But if I crook it, let's flip this horizontal. I think there's text I'm missing, so give me a second. By breaking this branch in half like this, I take away the priority of being over here from the branch itself. The branch can now prioritize this push, which is the largest branch. That should be the dominant branch and dictating the shape overall. So now I can just add this one on as an extension here, and then we thicken that up, stabilize it. Let me catch up to y'all here in a second. I don't need this. This should actually, this space here should be filled by the main branch, so that it can continue to position itself as the dominant branch in this area. There, like that. What's up? So what is a game engine more exactly, and what makes for a good one, and why is the 5e engine better than 3.5? Okay, so the game engine, it's kind of the game engine generally refers to the what's the word I'm looking for? How you run, like the actual mechanics of how you run the game. Right, in 3.5, in 5e, 4e, everything is driven by a d20, right? Like all attacks, all ability checks, all saving throws, those all use a d20 die. It is the d20 system. That is the engine. Rollmaster, for example, is a different system. And Rollmaster, the way that Rollmaster works is everything is built off of percentages. If you want to do something, roll percentile dice. The result, the task that you're attempting to perform has a pass or fail, and your character is spending experience or character vitality or resources or experience points or whatever to purchase different skills and powers and spells, etc. 1 percentile point at a time. So if I were to attack somebody, I would have off the cuff like a 50% chance of hitting somebody. Anybody I swing a sword at is 50-50 chance I hit them. The more I invest my points into that percentage system, the higher percent chance I have of successfully hitting them. The more proficient that target is at surviving, the lower my percentage gets. So the DM is taking away percentile points by making the target more difficult. Like full plate armor might may take 20% away from my chance of hurting my target. So if I have like a 60% chance because I'm 3rd level or whatever, and I fight somebody in full plate, I'm only going to have a 40% chance of hitting them. And so that is essentially what a game engine is. How do we determine whether you're able to do a thing or not? And the more fluid and swift your resolution mechanic is, that's the game engine's resolution mechanics. So the more swift your resolution mechanics are, the more basically the more your system is capable of reaching a wider audience. Blades in the Dark is a super simple system. It has a wide appeal. But Rollmaster isn't. Rollmaster is a very technical percentile system. Palladium has a lot of different mechanics inside of it that makes system mastery difficult. It has percentiles as well as d20 rolls plus other types of rolls. 2nd edition, 1st edition, Old Beckme, Redbox, BX, all those early editions of Dungeons & Dragons did not have a unified game system. But it was also the first game system that existed for making role-playing games. Essentially, the guiding philosophy behind the original D&D was a percentile system, but they used funny dice to consolidate that system. If you have a 33% chance of doing something, roll a 6-sided die. If you roll a 1 or 2, you're successful on that task, because that's 33%. If I've got a 50% chance of succeeding at something, roll an 8-sided die. If you roll 1 to 4, you succeed at the task. Otherwise, you rolled above your 50% chance and you fail. That's essentially what the original D&D was. It was more concerned about your chance of success, your percent chance of succeeding a task. And like the rogues literally had a stack of percentiles that would increase as you gain level. It became a higher and higher probability that you would succeed at stealing some, like picking somebody's pocket. It was just a straight percentage chance that increased with levels, not with skill or ability. It was a static number that it didn't matter what kind of a thief you were. At 17th level, you'd have a 92% chance of successfully picking anybody's pocket. Now the DM can introduce modifiers as to reducing the percent chance of being able to pick a pocket. But when that pocket fails and your rogue is discovered, you're now going to roll a 20-sided die to attack that character, that target, and hit them, so maybe you can get away if you stun them or something. Like if you knock them out, then you can run away and escape. So the old school D&D game system, it was working off of these percentile ideas, but it also had multiple gears that it could shift between combat versus exploration versus spell casting, blah blah blah. So its game engine was sloppy because it had so many, and it didn't have a gearbox to switch gears. It had a couple gears here. It also had a lever, like a dial that you would have to turn over here. Like imagine your car. If you're in park, that's one gear, and then you want to drive. So then you would pull the lever to make it go backwards, and then you have a dial that then turns up how fast it is that's going to go. That's your pedal. Your pedal is a dial that is changing the speed on your speedometer for how fast your car can go. But then you shift gears again, and now you're going forward, and then you would use that pedal system to again dictate how fast is your car going to go in speed now that you're in the forward gear. But imagine if you wanted to imagine if you want to turn directions. Now you have a wheel mechanic that the more you turn the wheel, the greater the arc of turn that your car has. These are all different mechanics, game mechanics inside the game of driving a car. It doesn't have a single unified mechanic like I have a joystick. Like in a video game, a car would be, I have a joystick, and if I go this way, the car goes forward. If I go this way, the car turns in that direction. If I go back, the car will go in reverse and then back up. And depending on how far I pull the stick, depends on how fast backwards, how fast forwards, or how severe of a turn am I going to make. And that's how most flight simulator games work on, like, say, an old Commodore, an Apple II, or whatever. Like a really old computer, or like the original Top Gun Nintendo game. It had its controller, and that's basically how the controls work. But then they came out with more and more complicated interaction systems, so you have like an actual flight simulator that pilots actually use to log hours. That is an exact replica of a cockpit with like different levers to make engines go at different speeds, and you got the stick to be able to control the angle and pitch that you have. But you have your drive stick here to punch up how fast am I moving. Like if I do this, I'm going to do a hard fast dive. If I do this, I'm going to make a hard bank turn. Like these are different mechanics in the game engine of flying a plane. Hopefully this stuff is making sense. So when we build a game, we want to determine what can that game do. What is the intention of that game? D&D is a combat simulator. It is designed to have cool battles, cast spells to kill monsters, but we also have, for role-playing, a social tier that's basically just stop rolling dice for a minute and LARP at each other. That becomes your social structure. Investigation, exploration, we're not prioritizing that in this game, so we don't have a bunch of resources and action economy breaking down how you camp. It's like, no, you just fucking camp. Make a die roll. If you roll well, you get enough food to feed you for a week. You don't have to fucking think about it. If you roll poorly, you have to roll again tomorrow. Eventually you'll roll well enough that you did something to make the result, but the game is hardly about gathering food. It's about killing stuff. But since we're playing human living characters, they have to eat. So let's just make eating easy, right? You can either spend gold in a community that offers it for gold, or you make a single die roll and now you can feed your team for a week. Like that's as deep as D&D wants to get into it. But people are unsatisfied with that. Like we want more it's not that we want more exploration options, we want more wilderness survival options. That's very different because people conflate the exploration pillar with a survival system, and D&D has no need for a survival system because by basically third level-ish, your characters have infinite food available to them with Goodberry. Survival becomes a non-issue. As long as you're not being killed by the environment, you're done. And because that was never the goal of 5th edition. but people are unsatisfied with that. They want more gears to shift when it comes to survival. That's what most people mean when they say there's not much of an exploration pillar in D&D. It's because you aren't thinking about, it's how you're thinking about it. Are you considering a like if you're interrogating somebody, D&D technically calls that a social pillar because you're asking them questions and getting information. But it's actually the exploration pillar. You're attempting to extract information from a hostile environment, this conversation. And the person that you're interrogating is the enemy. They are a monster that's attempting to prevent you from gaining the information that you want. If you wanted to, you could really, like the dating sim, you could deep dive into hard mechanics about interrogating somebody using your insight check as a sort of saving throw to overcome bullshit that your interrogated target is attempting to trick you with. If you fail your insight check, it is that target is successfully leading you down a narrative path that your characters will be compelled to follow up on because it's presented as the truth. So, but that's a very narrative thing. Truth versus lies is a very heady theoretical concept, as opposed to I cut your arm off is very absolute. So you have to think about like what if you're going to create a game that the game engine is, that's hard set to making interrogations a deep action economy activity. You have to have rules in the game that enforce the results that you get as something that you're plausibly going to follow. It's like the DM can't have that insight check be out in the open, or if the characters roll the die, they can't know that a 20 is good and a 1 is bad, because if they roll a 1 on their insight check, you're not going to believe the narrative that the DM is providing to you. So that in that instance, that is bad game mechanics, because if you're attempting to deceive the players, but you're making all the results publicly visible, they know from a player's side that they're being deceived. That requires players to disassociate their own knowledge from their player's knowledge and require that they play their character as though they don't know this is the villain. Even though I just rolled in front of you that you now as players know for a fact this is the villain, what kind of a game would do that and still enforce that your characters don't act upon that? Well, that's going to be a game where you're leaning into the narrative of being deceived. You want to know that you're being deceived so you know how to properly portray your character. As opposed to I'm using this character as a user interface in the world for my own opinions, and in my own player opinion, I know that this is the killer. So I want my players to now take actions that are appropriate for knowing that you are the killer. As opposed to if I'm going to really make a LARP experience out of this, I know that this is the killer, and my challenge in this encounter is to, even though as a player I know that's the killer, let them walk away. How can I have a satisfying narrative experience that I am participating as a player with a character that does not know this is a killer, but we all know it's the killer? That guides the narrative. That's going to guide the actions and the statements that I'm going to have my character make. Because as a player, I know this is the killer. So the scene is the killer. We all know this is the killer, and they get to get away. So let's begin having that experience. Let's LARP that now. Like, you're not going to turn it around. It's like, you're the killer, unless like you're doing a subversion thing where it's a reveal, like a surprise reveal that they are the killer, and then you get to act accordingly. But if the scene is dictated, no, this character is going to get away, even though you know they're the killer, like that could be very unsatisfying for the players, unless they aren't actually trying to solve the mystery. They're just trying to portray the characters that are solving the mystery. Solving the mystery is no longer important. How your character's narrated during the different beats is. So like in a Call of Cthulhu game, you know your character's going to die at the end. It's just an issue of what information can we find out before we're killed. So that is a very, very different game than D&D. D&D's game is I want to survive. I have to survive this experience by fighting things and surviving damaging challenges. My goal is to survive so I can have another adventure. But a Call of Cthulhu campaign can be a series of one-shots where the characters always die. But the player's experience is that they are continuously, through the sacrifice of their teams, getting additional pieces of information about this overarching storyline that's happening between each of the different player groups that are killed. So you go into the game knowing you're going to die, but your real objective as a player is to gather as much information as you can. So as players, outside of the characters, you can start putting the story together. So the next team that you build, maybe we can find out more about the timing of this thing as opposed to what the result of this thing will be, for instance. So hopefully this is making sense. So again, the game engine is how you resolve the tasks that are performed inside of the game. And the more efficient, the more easy it is for players to comprehend how does the game engine work, and the more simple the game engine is, the more you can mix up and create diversity. And like if the only thing is roll a 20-sided die, the higher the number, the better. What are different ways that we can have characters roll higher results on a 20-sided die? You can add bonuses to the die, which are like ability points and proficiency modifiers and weapon bonuses. You can have them roll more dice, which is like the advantage or the disadvantage system. They're rolling more dice, and you're picking the highest result. You could have them roll multiple dice and add them together. That's a dice pool, or you can have them roll multiple dice, and as long as you get however many times you get this result, it determines how many successes you have. That's a dice pool system. I'm going to throw 6 dice, and I have to roll a hard 6 on each of them to score success. So how many of these dice can I roll a 6 or better? Right? That becomes another game mechanic. Shadowrun has that. World of Darkness has that. Set the number that you need, and however many dice you throw hit that number, that's your scale of success. By the number of, the difficulty is the number, and your scale of success is how many dice got that number. And they use a D10, so your difficulty is on a scale of 1 to 10. A 10 being the most difficult thing possible, a 1 being something you can automatically do because you can't roll less than a 1. Every die is automatically going to succeed. But how many dice are you going to roll for that obvious success? If I only roll 1 die, yeah, I succeeded at the task. I eventually opened the can, but opening it was a struggle. As opposed to Popeye rolling 6 dice with a roll of 1 to open a can. When Popeye opens a can, he squeezes it and all the fluid pops out and it all lands in his mouth in one shot. That is an amazing can opening die roll that the dice pool allows Popeye to accomplish, right? That's a stupid analogy, but again, it's just creating a narrative, right? Which is what a game system is designed to do, is create a narrative that is fun around resolving tasks that you want to perform. So the Cypher system does it by roll a 20-sided die on a scale of 1 to 3, that's a 1, and then 4 to 6 is a 2. So on a scale of 1 to 10, you're going to have to roll with modifiers a number between 1 and 30. And the way that Cypher system works is the better I am at doing something, the lower I can make that number. So I don't have to have bonuses to make my result higher, although I do. My real goal is to reduce the actual target number that I want to roll. So instead of having to roll a 18 or better on a 20-sided die, I now only have to roll a 6 or better. Because of the options that my character has drastically reduced the challenge for my character. Like opening that can might be a difficulty for mere mortals, but for my Popeye character, that 18 becomes a 6. So when I roll my 20-sided die, it's highly likely I'm going to roll above a 6. So it becomes really easy for Popeye to open a can of spinach. And there's no limit to what a game engine can be. In World of Darkness live role playing, the game engine is hammer rock scissors. So whenever you're having a confrontation with somebody that you're talking to, and I've seen this, really good LARPers, they'll be talking to each other, they'll have an ongoing conversation, and they'll do a hand signal like this, and then while they're talking, they'll do hammer, rock, scissors. So they'll be determining success, and that success, like I did scissors, you did rock. So during this conversation, your rock beat my scissors. I am now adjusting the conversation that I'm having, knowing that you have advantage over me right now. So instead of me getting aggressive, I suddenly become more passive in my conversation because you broke my scissors with your rock. Now a werewolf comes into a conversation, he starts wagging his dick around, and he starts pushing people around. And he's like, yeah, I want you guys to give me some rum, and I don't want to have to pay for it. And he does a thing, and he throws a bomb, of course. The only thing that can beat a bomb is scissors. Everyone knows scissors beats bomb, but bomb breaks, bomb shatters rocks, bomb breaks scissors, and bomb shreds. Bomb destroys rocks, bomb shreds paper, but scissors can cut the fuse on the bomb. So scissors can beat both paper and bombs. So when you're a guru, you either want to play a rock or a bomb. And that narratively is very hostile. Guru, werewolves, they're very blunt. They just kind of bash their way into a situation with a rock. Or they just blow things up. They just go rage and just start killing stuff, destroying an entire scene, which is what the bomb is. So narratively, guru, werewolves are going to bomb or going to hit things with rocks. And people that know how to deal with guru are either going to use scissors to cut that cord, or they're going to use paper to cover the rock. So knowing that you're going to use either scissors or paper, you're going to want to use either, you can use scissors yourself to counter the paper in a metagame sort of mental process, or you can use rock, or you can use bomb. You have a different set of options than what other people do, but you're still playing hammer, rock, scissors. But that's where you get like hammer, rock, scissors, Gecko, Spock, the 5-way. Like that's an expansion of hammer, rock, scissors, right? You do like Spock, and you can like do lizard. So you have different hand signals, but that is a different game engine. Hammer, rock, scissors is a viable game engine and very useful when you're standing and holding a drink in one hand and LARPing in the other, because you can still do a signal. You can go 1, 2, 3, and then you throw your thing. But that hammer, rock, scissors is designed to make very small incremental adjustments. That while you're LARPing and you're holding a conversation, the more you win these little side hammer, rock, scissor gestures, and you can see around the room people throwing hands, and you're seeing, oh, that guy's losing that conversation because he just lost his hammer, rock, scissors. Over there, that guy's won the last 5 scissor rocks in a row. He is completely dominating this conversation. And because it's all about like vampires manipulating each other. So that game engine is really an accurate, really good narrative system, because vampires are doing things subtle and on the sly. So all of your game engine just basically comes down to a gesture, whatever it is that you're doing. And you can get really sly with it over time. Like that's a really deep dive into LARP culture, if you've ever been there before. In college, I like goth girls, and all the goth girls that I knew played World of Darkness. So I got really familiar with World of Darkness because I like the girls. So, I mean, hey, know your foe, right? But that gave me more insight into the world of LARP than I think I ever really wanted to know. But, I just wanted to know the people that were playing it. So I had my reasons. That feels like a good place for me to pause and reflect for a moment. What time is it? Oh shit, it's 8 o'clock. My timer is off today. I gotta go. So that's the answer for now. Anyone that wants to come back and have that conversation with me more tomorrow, I'll be back tomorrow. I'll be back at lunch today. We're gonna continue working on the martial power system. We're making an adventure for playtesting. So we'll see I'll get into something, and I'll be back in probably about 5-ish hours, maybe between 5 and 6 hours. 5 hours. I'll be back in 5 hours. So that's it for now, guys. I am out of here, and thanks a lot.